Welcome into the New Orleans Saints podcast. You'll hear from players, coaches, broadcasters, and writers that cover the NFL on a daily basis. The New Orleans Saints podcast starts right now. Here's your host, Erin Summers.
Welcome into the New Orleans Saints podcast. I'm Erin Summers alongside Todd Graffagnini, who has recovered from his birthday. We didn't wish you happy birthday yesterday, so I'm sorry.
Thanks a lot, Erin.
We didn't do it officially on the podcast, but I did wish him a happy birthday. But things today at practice were very energetic. We've kind of seen the defense get the best of the offense through the first 2 days, but I think today things were pretty even. The offense stepped up. They had some really good plays. Just overall, kind of what stood out to you?
Well, that's what you want to see, Erin. Look, and Dennis Allen mentioned this after practice. You don't want to see one side of the ball dominate the other. Today, I thought obviously it's only the third day, but today was the best practice because you saw really good plays on both sides of the ball. And that's 3 straight days now where you've seen multiple interceptions by the defense. But today, we saw explosive plays by the offense. And I thought all 3 quarterbacks had a pretty solid day. Derek Carr threw the ball extremely well. You're not seeing the ball hit the ground very much when Carr is quarterback. Jake Haener had a really good day today. He had an outstanding throw, again, to Rashid Shaheed, who made a sliding catch by the right sideline. Of course, Derek Carr hit Chris Olave, that bomb down the left sideline when Olave went over Lante Taylor. I just think the scheme now, the offensive scheme, is going to put these offensive players in a position to succeed. And if you listen to Chris Olave and Rashid Shaheed talk the last couple days, they're going to be put in positions to make big plays, and that's what it's all about. Yards after catch, you're hearing that a lot. But just to watch all the motion and the play action and the bootleg rollouts by the quarterbacks, giving them more time to throw the ball, I think that's what the general idea was when Clint Kubiak was brought in here to be the offensive coordinator. And look, the pads are still not on yet. We haven't really gotten into the meat of this training camp. But today you got a little bit of a glimpse of what this offense could be.
You mentioned a couple things there, so I definitely want to get to some sound. Head coach Dennis Allen on the practice.
Overall, I thought another good practice. I was just telling the team, there were some things, there's been some things that I've seen, defensively each day that I've really been pleased about. And there's been some things offensively that I've been really pleased about. So, what you're looking for is a little bit of that, ebb and flow to practice. And you don't ever want to see one side of the ball dominate the whole practice. I don't think we've seen that yet. And so I think the one thing, defensively that, has been encouraging is we've gotten our hands on the football a significant amount of times. We've made some plays, taking the ball away, which has been impressive. And then look, offensively, I think there's been, throughout the course of the last 3 days, I think there's been some explosive plays down the field, which has been encouraging to see. So I think we're making progress, and yet we still have a long way to go.
Then there was the play that you mentioned from quarterback Jake Haener as he threw it across the middle to Rashid Shaheed. He kind of went into detail about that play after practice and what he saw there.
We had double dig called, and I tried to hold that safety. They're playing quarters, so I just needed to pay attention to him, make sure he wasn't going to undercut it. Jonathan made a great break on the ball, but Shaheed ran a great route. We were on time, threw it low and away only where he could catch it. And when you're precise and when you listen to your feet in this offense, good things happen.
I talked to defensive coordinator Joe Woods after practice, and he had some specific things to say about their takeaways. There's a lot of energy out at practice today, Coach. Yeah. The defense is flying around. We've seen several takeaways each day, and they are aggressive trying to punch that ball out at the end of plays. What are you emphasizing out here as we start camp?
It's exactly what you said. DA talked to the defense, and we want to get back to playing defense the way we're used to. And with that, you got to play fast. We always talk about it's not what we call, it's about how we play it. And that's what you're seeing out there on the field. So today was a great day. Guys went into the ball, finishing, creating a few takeaways.
Yeah, it's been a lot of fun to watch. A couple players have stood out here early on in camp. Defensive end Isaiah Foskey, he's in year 2. Didn't get a lot of run last year, but he is making some plays here. What have you liked about him so far?
You always look for players like him to make that big jump year 2. So last year he got to play a little bit, his first year, but now we're really looking for him to be part of that rotation.
They do have some younger players working in on the defensive side of the ball now. Any defensive players that have kind of caught your eye?
Carl Granderson. He had a couple of sacks today from that right defensive end spot. And you mentioned Foskey. Well, when Granderson leaves and Cam Jordan leaves, you still have Nathan Shepard and Colin Saunders in the middle, but you're going to have Peyton Turner replace Cam Jordan on the left side, and then you're going to see Foskey replace Granderson. But I mean, Dennis Allen was throwing bouquets at Carl Granderson today when he was asked about him. He basically was mentioning all these guys that need to step up their game a little bit, and Carl Granderson was not on the list, according to Dennis Allen. He just said the way he has worked the last couple of years, coming in at 230 pounds and now at 280, and understanding schemes and how to rush the passer. I mean, it was just fun. And now Granderson is going to be counted on to be a big play guy from that edge rusher spot. And the Saints need it because Dennis Allen is, look, Dennis Allen hadn't thrown any punches the first, 3 days about what needs to get better. And rushing the passer last year was a sore spot. The lack of sacks were alarming at times, which makes all the turnovers that they were able to get even more impressive because everything goes hand in hand. You rush the passer, it's hard for guys to get open, and it makes the secondary's job easier. So the tough part about last year was the Saints had a good pass rush, but they never really got home more than what they needed to do. And Carl Granderson is one of those guys that is going to be needed to help increase that sack total and at least get the quarterback very uncomfortable back there when they're not just picking you apart. But Granderson today had the best day defensively.
Yeah, I think the defensive end position overall is going to be interesting because you mentioned obviously Cam Jordan, and then you have Carl Granderson that's definitely going to be there. Isaiah Foskey, Peyton Turner is somebody that he spoke after practice hoping that he can stay healthy. I mean, it's been tough for him. He's looked good, through camp, and then something just random has happened.
I mean, you think about what happened last year. We actually did a one-on-one with him for our TV show, and I actually did the interview, and he called it prehab instead of rehab because he was doing everything he could to prevent something happening. And he didn't miss a practice during training camp last year. It looked like he was going to be that guy that the Saints have hoped since they drafted him out of the University of Houston, and then he gets hurt, fluke injury in the first game of the year against the Titans. It's just, sometimes it just comes down to bad luck. Hopefully, again, the bad luck stays away from Peyton Turner because, again, the Saints are going to need him from that edge rush spot. And he's got all the physical ability and capability. He's just got to stay on the field.
Yeah, because, as you mentioned, Foskey is starting to stand out, so he's coming along. And then you have Chase Young kind of waiting around too.
Well, the first thing, and Dennis Allen mentioned that today also, this is a big dude. I mean, he is a physical specimen. And if you think, if this guy can come back, and they're still working him back into it, he's participating in individual drills. He has not done any team stuff yet. Again, he hasn't, played football in quite some time. But if he can get on the field and maximize his capability, that is going to be someone who could be a force for the Saints defensively. Again, just knock on the forehead here that hopefully everything goes well for him health-wise, but so far so good because he is out there and he is doing individual drills.
Yeah, I think it's cool that he came to New Orleans immediately upon getting picked up, and he has spent a ton of time with the team, with the defensive staff, in the building, and getting to know everything that he can about the Saints. So he's ready for when he can actually get in for a rep because he hasn't done any team stuff yet. It's just been all individual work, but he's right there. I mean, he was standing there watching. One of the first guys right there behind the action, taking everything in. So that's good to see. Just he really seems excited, energized by his opportunity here. We got the defensive ends there. There was a lot of fun stuff that we saw at practice. For the first time, we saw the new kickoff return.
Right.
And it looks crazy. It's going to be very different.
Really, really geared towards offense. And if you can set it up correctly, there are going to be some big, big plays. I thought the really cool thing today, and we were watching it together, Erin, was how special teams coordinator Darren Rizzi was mixing and matching who was back there returning. And Rashid Shaheed mentioned that a little bit today. Do you want to have a speed guy back there along with a little more physical guy, or you could put 2 speed guys back there? Again, we could get into the real details of it a little later in a podcast, but the teams that are going to figure this out quicker are going to have a big time advantage on the teams that do not. And I promise you, at some point this year, the Saints are going to return a kickoff back because they've got the guys to do. Like, you put Rashid Shaheed back there and you give him one seam, and the way the defense is set up, they don't have a whole lot of running head start to get there. You could almost block it like a running play. And if Rashid Shaheed breaks through the first line, there's nobody there. I mean, he's gone. So he loved the new kickoff rule. But again, it's going to be the teams that figure it out before the opposing team defensively. Those are the teams that are going to have the most advantage because it is absolutely set up to return every single time.
Yeah, it's interesting, too, because they set up so far to the right-hand side of the field or the left-hand side that left the complete other half of the field wide open. So if you can cut that corner, I mean, you were clear space to the end zone.
Well, you're going to have 2 guys back there as returners, and the one who does not catch the ball, the other one is basically a lead blocker. So, again, we saw Taysom Hill back there as the lead guy, not returning, but of course, we've seen Taysom at fullback, at tight end during this training camp. So the players who are in there, that's going to be something they're going to have to figure out. But no, it is going to be probably one of the very early storylines of the new NFL season because nobody's ever seen it before.
Yeah, I think that's what's going to make these preseason games even more important. And we've heard from special teams coordinator Darren Rizzi about that because you've never gone live action against somebody else. Sure, you can try to mimic what you think defenses are going to do. You can think about what you're going to do. But until you actually get out there and do it against a different opponent, it's kind of interesting, too, like, how much are we going to see that? Are we actually going to see that in the joint practices? Because they usually don't do a lot of special teams work there.
I got to believe absolutely they're going to see it in the joint practices against the Niners because the Niners need to figure it out as well. So, we talked a couple days ago about how beneficial the joint practices are. It's usually when we're watching practice and you see the team drill and, they're going to do special teams now, and then you start chatting about something else. That wasn't the case today when they started working on that kickoff because everyone that is out here covering these practices are keeping a close eye because we need to learn it as well as people who cover the team and watch these practices and of course, are going to be watching the games.
Yeah, you mentioned Taysom Hill being back there, Rashid Shaheed, we saw Alontae Taylor. So very different than what we would usually see from the return game. So that's going to be fun to continue to watch, and we'll continue to report on what we're seeing and how things are getting adjusted, I guess, on both sides in regards to that. Tomorrow we are going to have David Carr on our show. We got to talk to him last year as well, obviously the brother of Derek Carr. Derek, I mean, you mentioned it, I think early, Derek's looked good. He felt like last year everything was so new. He was kind of like a fish out of water for a little while. But this year he's really tried to lock in and work on specific things and get to know this new offense. Yeah,
it's a comfort level with Carr as well. So, another year in the city. He knows the lay of the land now. A lot of logistical stuff, which he struggled with early, and he admitted that. So, but yeah, and I just think also, Erin, the new scheme is going to put him in a position to succeed with a lot of play action. It's going to give him some extra time. As we mentioned before, there's just a lot of motion on the line of scrimmage, out of the backfield, and it's really just to help the quarterback be at his best. And so far, it's been good. Has he thrown an interception or two? Well, he threw one yesterday, but that's going to happen in training camp. And again, sometimes you got to tip your cap to the other side of the ball as well. They're professionals that get paid as well. So it's not going to be all roses every single day. I just thought today was, like, just from a Tater standpoint, that was fun to watch today. And training camp practices sometimes are not very fun to watch, but today it was.
I feel like the team is a little more energized, maybe because of the weather. And that is one of the points of being out here, is you're not getting taxed by the heat and the humidity, and you're being able to bring more to these practices, which I think in turn is going to allow you to get more out of them.
I agree 100%. And look, I know it's tough for everybody back home not being able to come out to Airline and watch the team play and watch the team practice during this training camp. We talked about the logistics, we won't get into that. But, I mean, if you look back already, 3 practices in, would the team, if we were back on Airline, would the team have had the energy and just what we saw out there today, even 3 in? I mean, you could tell last year, because it was just such a hot summer last year, you got to power through things mentally. And football is a physical sport. I just don't think there's any way we would have seen the type of practice that we did today if we were back home right now. And again, that's the reality. And Dennis Allen mentioned earlier, with the weather being the way it is, you can push the team a little bit harder, where if you were back home, it'd be tough to do the things that they're doing right now this early in training camp and not be physically draining. And when you start to be physically drained, then it goes upstairs to the mental side, and that's when a lot of mistakes happen. We didn't see a whole lot of that today at all. No,
not at all. And honestly, the practices kind of seem like they just keep moving, because usually you're stopping a lot to take water breaks, which obviously is necessary, and they're still drinking water out here. The sun's still hot. It is a little bit different, and I think that that's beneficial as well, just to be able to kind of keep moving through the practice. That kind of keeps the energy up. So, yeah, really, really fun to watch today. You mentioned earlier the play to Olave from Derek Carr, and I think we're going to continue to see stuff like that. Yeah, Carr, I heard him on the sideline after the play. He said, I saw Olave down the line. I saw you in one-on-one. He was going up against Alontae Taylor. I mean, they were battling, but Carr said, I figured, why not just throw it, see what happens? And Olave went up and got the ball, and Alontae had a hand in his face or in his hands. I mean, he could have easily tipped it, but Olave held on to it, not only through contact, but then also once he hit the ground, he rolled over and still had the ball, which is huge for him, because people have ragged on him before about his ability to continue through contact, and he does look a little bit bigger as well. The 50-50 ball, if you will. I mean, and look, if he's going to be wide receiver 1, and all signs are pointing to that right now, he's going to have to make those plays. He's got to make the contested catch. That was really the knock on him the first couple of years. But I love that interaction, and you, like you said, we were right next to each other, but you heard Derek Carr come up to Olave and say, I'm going to put it out there for you. And that goes back to what we've heard the last couple of days as well about the relationship between Carr and Olave and Carr and Shaheed. Now that they're another year in, the chemistry is going to be a lot better. So, like I said, it's still very early in camp. The pads have not been put on yet, but these are the little things you have to see each and every day as you get ready for the regular season. Yeah, absolutely. Let's go ahead and close this out with some words from Olave and Carr on their relationship and how the chemistry is developing.
We're getting way better, man. I mean, it was our first year last year, so it was kind of up and down, but that's what comes with the game of football. So we worked a lot this offseason. OTAs was really good. And we got off to a good start these first 2 days of camp, getting extra work in. But that's going to come with time. So I'm not worried about that at all. We both are competitors. We both want to be the best. So we gotta do something to be good. So
we've grown so much from the start of last year to now because when Mike was here, they're getting his plays, and then is it Chris, and then it was that transition of Chris was starting to get the one targets, all that kind of stuff, and it was different. But coming into this year, he knows every ball. He's like, in his head, every ball's mine. Every play that's called, he should feel like I'm getting that thing. And so just the communication, the extra work we're putting in after practice, we're going to do it every day. Just all of that stuff, is just growth for both of us because it was kind of spread out last year. Whereas now it's like, all right, dude, these are going to be your, 30 plays. Let's get really good at these. And so, I think his mentality from that aspect, I think, his confidence, I guess, just knowing the situation is definitely more comfortable.
All right, so we're back here tomorrow. It'll be day 4 of Saints training camp. It's going to be the last day before they have their first day off, and then they'll put the pads on Monday, which will be even more fun. Things will definitely get kicked up a notch. I'm interested to see how the pads in this weather is because I feel like it's going to be a whole nother level of competition out there.
Well, that's all about the offensive and defensive lines when the pads come on, and that's when real football starts. So, they put the shells on today, so a little bit more, but it's not training camp until the pads go on and you see those linemen start to hit, and then we'll start to see those OL versus DL drills and the inside running drills, and that's when it really gets fun.
Yeah, definitely. So we'll be sure to get all those breakdowns on the line to you on Monday's edition of the podcast. But thank you again for listening in.
Thanks for listening to the New Orleans Saints podcast. Join us 3 times per week on NewOrleansSaints.com, the Saints mobile app, or you can download the podcast on iTunes. We'll see you next time, right here on the New Orleans Saints podcast.